Part 24 can create miracles like telescope or clairvoyance. Ming Yu's ability to bring it up as a drill project shows that he still has some confidence. But unfortunately he can't watch it in person. At this time, Ming Yu's face also showed a bit of eagerness. He raised his hand and summoned a personal soldier and whispered a few words in a low voice. The soldier understood and trotted out of the tent. After a while, the personal soldiers ran in again and replied, "My prince, Master Huang is here." Ming Yu was taken aback. He came in person? Didn't he let someone pick it up? Why did he even come here in person? His voice just fell. There was a hearty laugh at the tent door. "My prince, the villain is not too old to walk. It is really uneasy if the villain doesn't bring such a precious thing in person." Hearing this voice, Ming Yu had already greeted him. Everyone was pondering in their hearts, who was this person? Who could actually be greeted by the laboring prince? And saw that Ming Yu had already walked in with an old man with white beard and hair. The man hunched his back, and the wind and frost of the years outlined folds on his face. Looks like an ordinary old man, but Ming Yu's respectful attitude makes people a little bit puzzled. After he stood still, the old man would pay homage to Ming Yu. Ming Yu hurriedly stopped. "Old Huang, this prince has already said that there is no need for more courtesy. He is grateful to the prince. And who is not grateful to the craftsmen who followed the prince? They are the lowest craftsmen, doing the hardest, most tiring and complicated work, and they are often called to drink, abused and whipped every day." When the prince left the capital, he specially went to the craftsmen's camp, selected various craftsmen, and asked them if they would like to go west with him. He will not force others, and he can also guarantee that he will never treat anyone who follows him. Some people want to be safe and stable, but they are unwilling to take risks. And some people simply break the jar, move people to live, and move trees to death. At such an old age, he should not have been fooling around, but at that time he heard the prince say something. "You are all useful people, and you are the ones who can create miracles." He lived most of his life, from the apprentice has always come here under the contemptuous eyes of others. All he heard was swearing and shouting, and it was the first time he heard someone compliment them, saying they were useful people. At this moment, he finally understood how valuable it was to get the trust of others. At that time, he first understood what respect was meant, and just because of this sentence, he would definitely repay the kindness of knowing it, even if he was ruthless. So, he was the first to stand up, and he was willing to follow this young prince to the west and achieve a career. The young craftsmen who were still swaying saw that Huang Lao all stood up, so they made up their minds and stood up one after another and expressed their willingness to follow the prince. In this way, there are dozens or hundreds of craftsmen like them in the westbound team. And the prince did not treat them badly. Since he came here and settled down, he has served them with delicious food and drink every day. This should not be the treatment that a craftsman should have. At first, everyone was still uneasy. The original bitter life was used to it, and the sudden change made everyone a little uncomfortable. Later, the prince called them together and talked about their future plans. They were divided into groups, assigned tasks, and specially allocated a sum of money. What kind of research funding? Let them each come up with their own craftsmanship, and just work on the craftsmanship they are most proud of. Whether you stick to the rules and polish your own skills, or invent or create novel things, in a word, the money is given to you anyway, and you can spend it as you like. As long as there are satisfactory results, then all the honors will be what they deserve owned. It is for this reason that the enthusiasm of the craftsman is unprecedentedly high. Even Huang Lao, who seems to be a decade younger, walks like wind. Today, this thing was ordered by the prince long ago for them to do it. The prince explained the principle of this thing to them one by one. And then let them start to do it. It's easy to say, but hard to do. Repeated practice before and after, failed countless times, until today, I barely made a finished product. So, he was afraid that the prince would be in a hurry to wait, and as soon as the things were ready, he hurriedly sent them all over. Ming Yu was indeed very impatient. He waved his hand without being polite, and said directly, "Don't say this, the things are done." Everyone didn't understand what made Ming Yu anxious. As a prince, there is nothing seen? We'll rush into this for the same thing. Huang Lao smiled and said, hurry up, and finally get out. This villain was afraid of being damaged, so I brought it here myself. After speaking, he carefully took down a small wooden box tied behind his back. Ming Yu also took it personally, and placed it on the small wooden table lightly. My prince, open it and see if it's what you said. Ming Yu's heart beat a little faster, but he didn't hesitate. Open the wooden box, which is wrapped with layers of soft cloth. And all eyes are fixed on this thing. Be curious about what's in there. Following Ming Yu's movements, the soft cloth was lifted layer by layer, revealing a wooden long cylindrical object. When everyone saw the truth, they couldn't help but feel a little disappointed, and thought it was such a precious good thing. It turned out to be something made of wood. What use could this thing be? Ming Yu smiled with eyebrows and eyes, stretched out his hand and took the thing in his hand, and lightly rubbed the smooth surface. It can be seen that the craftsmen who made it are very careful. And even the surface is polished smooth and flat. Ming Yu said sincerely, Huang Lao, you have worked hard for you. Huang Lao shook his head again and said gratefully, the prince is serious, this is the duty of the villains. To be able to do things for the prince, the villains are honored. The prince is generous with a good temper and kindness. And they are very fortunate. In fact, how could they have the ability to do such exquisite things? It was all from His Highness's guidance. Speaking of which, the prince is the real smart, talented, and has a 7-hole and exquisite heart. Something that no one has ever thought of, said it through His Highness's mouth, and the thing made can actually win the power of creation. When the finished product came out, he saw its use for the first time, and he was beyond shocked. Now he also knows what the prince said at the beginning, following him. It is true that miracles can be created, they really created miracles. It is their blessing to be able to do things with such a prince. Everyone is eager to do more for the prince. Whenever the prince has any orders, he will do his best to complete it. Ming Yu put the end of the cylinder close to his eyes, and looked around like this, with an overjoyed look on his face. That's right, this is it. This is the telescope he polished with the crystal glass bottle that the emperor's father gave him, and it took more than a month to make. Well, it might be more apt to call it clairvoyance here. General Wei finally couldn't bear it anymore and asked, my prince, I don't know what this is. What's the use? Ming Yu put down the things and smiled mysteriously. I can't see through here, why don't I wait out and try this one? The effect of things. After he finished speaking, he walked out first, although everyone was a little unclear, but since the prince went out, it was difficult for them to keep up, so everyone also walked out of the tent one after another. Because of the confrontation drill, they chose to settle on a hill with a higher terrain. In this way, you can look at the overall situation with a high probability. And it is convenient to adjust the layout in time, and to better convey the order. At the foot of the mountain is the place where the red and blue sides are facing each other. Mo Zhang has already sent the order, and both sides have entered a state of preparation. Ming Yu looked at the past with a telescope, and the effect was there. But it was estimated that it was due to technology, and it was far less powerful than later generations. The future is the true clairvoyance, as long as the eyesight can see clearly. And this is just the original version of the telescope. For Ming Yu, although it is a bit unsatisfactory, it is already the best in terms of current conditions. And he really dare not be too demanding. Huang Lao was still a little uneasy in his heart, waiting for the confirmation of the prince with anticipation. In his opinion, such a divine object was bestowed by the prince. It was made from the hands of these craftsmen, and only if the prince's affirmation could make their hard work not in vain. You have done a good job. With this thing, our soldiers will have a better chance of winning against the enemy. After returning, this prince will definitely be rewarded. Seeing Huang Lao's worry, Ming Yu said frankly. When Elder Huang heard this, he was truly relieved. Rewards are no longer important. What matters is that the prince is satisfied, they can truly be affirmed, and everyone can be motivated. In this way, the craftsmen are full of energy and will make better objects for the prince in the future. What the hell is this thing? I'm so mysterious. Can the prince show it to the minister? Wen Yujiao couldn't bear it any longer, and asked Ming Yu directly. Ming Yu did not refuse, handed him the telescope in his hand, and explained, by the way, you only need to use this to look into the distance. And you can understand what it is. Wen Yujiao did as he was told, and looked at Ming Yu. He looked at the cylindrical object in his eyes and looked down the mountain. I'm going. What the hell is this? Wen Yujiao was so frightened that he almost threw the thing in his hand, but fortunately, he calmed down in time, so it didn't cause a catastrophe. Otherwise, this clairvoyant, which was just released not long ago, would be scrapped in his hands. When he looked back, he saw Ming Yu looking at him with a half smile, so a slightly embarrassed look on his face. He seemed to have lingering fears and said, "My prince, what is going on? Why do you see people and things at the foot of the mountain as if you were close to your eyes from this cylinder? Extremely clear? I don't know what kind of magic this is." Before Ming Yu could answer, General Wei, who was standing beside him, was already itching and couldn't wait to hear what Wen Yujiao said. He grabbed the binoculars in Wen Yujiao's hand and said, "How is this possible? Magical thing? Let me take a look." After speaking, he couldn't wait to pick it up and look. Fortunately, there were Wen Yujiao's words before, which made General Wei mentally prepared. But seeing the scene in front of him, he was still surprised, and Wen Yujiao said nothing wrong. There are people at the foot of the mountain, as well as grass, trees and rocks, but at this time, it seems that they are within reach. This, what is this? It's really weird. General Wei was amazed, and then said to Xie Yisho next to him, "General Xie has a lot of knowledge, have you ever seen such a fairy thing?" Xie Yisho didn't speak, and took the things in General Wei's hands very calmly. Ming Yu put his hands on his back, tilted his head to look at Xie Yisho, and the corners of his lips showed a smile that was not a smile. He wanted to see, "Xie Yisho, what kind of expression will you look like after using this telescope? Will Wanian Bingshan's face change? It will be interesting to see General Xia's face change." Ming Yu looks forward to it. Xie Yisho is not as anxious as the two before. After he took the thing in his hand, he carefully tossed it inside and out, and when he saw that it was almost there, only then did the binoculars point at his eyes and looked into the distance. "How is it? How about it?" Wen Yujiao circled around him, hoping Xie Yisho could give some opinions. Xie Yisho watched for a long time, and kept changing angles and positions, ignoring Wen Yujiao who was jumping beside him. Ming Yu thought that, "Can I see any difference from Xie Yisho's face?" I didn't expect that. He was not only not surprised at all, but the more he went on, the more skillful he used it. This made Ming Yu pursed his mouth a little unhappily, but he had to admit, the evildoer is the evildoer, and cannot be handled with common sense. After a long time, Xie Yishuo put down the telescope in his hand. He looked at Ming Yu with complicated eyes and asked bluntly, "Who made this thing?" Ming Yu pursed his lips in Huang Lao's direction. "Well, it's far away in the sky and right in front of you." Xie Yishuo deeply glanced at him, then turned to look at Huang Lao and asked in a very calm tone, "This is what you made?" Then the eyes of the bosses all fell on him. Where has Huang Lao seen this kind of battle? He stuttered a little when he spoke. "Yes. No, His Highness." Still Ming Yu couldn't stand it anymore, stepped forward and smiled and put Xie Yishuo's shoulder. "Hey. It doesn't matter who made this. What's important is what General Xie sees. What other good suggestions?" This scene shocked everyone's jaws, and the prince actually hooked up with Xie Yishuo, who was cold and refusing to be thousands of miles away. What are these two people? When is the relationship so good? Xie Yishuo stiffened his back, feeling embarrassed in his heart. And his face was so dark that it almost dripped with water for a while, but there was nothing he could do about Ming Yu's repeated approach. This person is the prince, so he can't just throw him away. Right? It's just like this. What's the system? Ming Yu was secretly funny. He found out last time that Xie Yishuo was not likable to get close to people. Seeing his darkened face, Ming Yu felt a little relieved in his heart. Cough cough. Wen Yujiao, who was so frightened by Ming Yu's three views, finally regained his senses, and could only cough twice in embarrassment. "My prince, how can you be so casual? You are no different from the gangsters in the capital who call friends. Look at their families, always cold. Solemn and dignified general who dares to be angry and dare not speak." However, seeing Xie Yishuo's helpless expression for the first time, he was inexplicably happy, and suddenly remembered this sentence, "The wicked have their own grind." And it is also a good thing that General Xie has the nemesis of Prince Duan. Someone with a smile on his face was swept by Xie Yishuo's cold look, and received the look of their general later back to settle the account. However, Wen Yujiao was shivering from the cold. OMG. If they don't stop the prince and relieve their generals will really go crazy. General Xie didn't dare to put his anger on the prince's head, but couldn't it be counted on their scoundrels? Anyone who dares to read the general's joke must be prepared to be implicated at any time. For the sake of his own life, Wen Yujiao took 2 steps forward. His brain was spinning fast. He quickly thought of a countermeasure, and planned to surround Wei and save Zhao. "My prince, why can this thing? He couldn't find the words for a while, and thought about it. Then he continued, "Why does the foot of the mountain seem so far away, but it looks like it's in front of you? And it's so clear that you can see everyone's face and eyebrows. I also asked the prince to help me." General Wei nodded again and again after hearing this. Recalling what he had just seen was truly incredible. In addition to the fairy spells and the like. After thinking about it, they can't think of a reason, so they can only ask the prince to solve their puzzles for them. After all, Huang Lao was someone brought by the prince from the capital. And this thing was made by the prince. Therefore, only the prince knows the origin of this thing. Ming Yu was finally willing to let go of Xie Yishuo, who was in trouble. When Ming Yu stood up straight, Xie Yishuo immediately moved to the side without a trace. The place where Ming Yu had just pasted was hot through the layers of fabric, and Ming Yu's temperature seemed to remain on his body, which made him feel an inexplicable palpitation in his heart. Since he was sensible, no one has approached him, only Ming Yu is this exception. He had never experienced this feeling in his memory. Because this thing is called clairvoyance. Ming Yu carried his hands on his back, raised his head and said complacently, as the name suggests, "This clairvoyance can clearly see objects in the distance." and it is the best to use it to detect the enemy's situation from a distance. Xie Yishou's slender fingers tightly grasped this thing called clairvoyance, which was almost as he imagined. With this thing, there is no need for people to take risks to inquire about the enemy's situation. It is only necessary to observe the ingenuity of the barbarians' formation from a distance, so as to come up with a more effective solution to the enemy. Obviously, Xie Yishou was not the only one who thought of this. Whoever was present was not an old fried dough stick that had been immersed in the battlefield for many years, and everyone had a green light in their eyes, staring at Xie Yishou's clairvoyance. If there is such a thing in his army, it might be the key to defeating the enemy.